Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Woo!
Let's
Welcome
go.
back, traders. God bless
I
each
wake
and
up
every
to
single
a
one of
little
your
bit of
families,
drool.
guys.
I'ma
Welcome
cut up
in
for that. It's
to
gonna
the
be
best technical analysis channel on the entire freaking internet. And today we're going to be covering stock ticker AMC as well as GameStop and the broader market, and then throwing in the GME warrants from a boy only in paradise. So without a freaking another word, right? Slap the like button and hit the subscribe button, and let's jump straight into it, guys. So AMC shares, shout out to Wolf of My Street, right? Go give him a follow on Twitter. Says AMC shares outstanding update as AMC shareholders voted to increase the authorized shares from 550 million to 1.1 billion in late 2025. As of June 18th, 2026, there were about 800 million shares issued and outstanding, right? Following the 200 million offering, AMC will have approximately around 169 authorized shares of common stock that can be issued in issuance in connection with employee plans or exchange, yada, 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 yada. But the biggest news about this, guys, is AMC has agreed to not do another offering for another 45 days from today, right, from June 24th, unless the stock were to rally 200%. So watching where we are today, right? But traders, what is the bad side scenario, right? You closed exactly where you had to close. But the bad side of it was you closed with a disgusting freaking daily candle. Look at the shooting star candle that you've printed after the hanging man candle. That is two bearish candlestick formations in a row. Not a good thing. But the bright side of that is the volume was absolutely piss poor. In fact, you look at the 4-hour chart and the volume on the day. Let's look from here, from TradingView. The volume on the day from the 4-hour chart, if you take a little peeky weeky zoom in, right, has continued to diminish here on the 4-hour chart. So what we're watching is potentially the equity offering to be completed, that announcement to come through, and for you to find a bounce off of this golden trend line, right? Because what you've done is you've now broken down on the shorter time frames from this bear flag. So theoretically, right, if you don't find that bounce sooner rather than later, it's likely you see this thing bear flag and then break down again, and that would not be a good scenario. In that case, I did not see this previously, but it is showing on TradingView on the 4-hour time frame that you have a daily or a 4-hour gap at about 139, and then you also have an hourly gap at, what was it, 112. So those are your two gaps to fill on the time frame for AMC. However, I'm in the belief that you're not going to see this crushing move down. Why is that the case? Because you already put in a touch of hidden bullish divergence. In case you guys are not aware what that is, that's where the stock makes a lower low on the RSI, but a higher low on the stock. So this is actually your second touch of bullish div. When you look at the stock here, you made one here in which the stock make a higher low, but the RSI made a lower low. And then you made another one where the stock made a higher low, but the RSI makes a lower low. And you see the reaction from this has been pretty positive. 70% gainer off of that hidden bullish div. Just to give you guys some technical reference of what I'm kind of seeing here. Now, on the shorter time frame, like we were talking about just a second ago, AMC is seeing now a breakdown below this ascending level of support and can now find a bounce, particularly right around that 197 territory. Now, you need to bounce there, because if you don't, you're going to lose your daily 200-day EMA. And that is your worst case scenario, traders. You do not want to lose the 200, currently at 197. So technically that is confluent with your uptrend there. And although you just got a daily MACD cross down, it's okay if you kind of consolidate here. Because as long as you stay above $2 or 197, traders, this thing is significantly freaking bullish. And as long as you can see this 50-day EMA continue to curl up here, all will be okay, in my opinion. Looking at the weekly time frame, because we would be remiss if we did not look at the weekly time frame, you're printing a bearish engulfing candle here now. That's not a great sign, right? Especially at significant resistance of about 296. So you rejected $3 perfectly, and you've come all the way down to your previous high. Now, that is significantly bullish for a bounce, but the problem here is this candlestick formation is closing at the low. You need to on the weekly time frame, right? You need to close at least a little bit higher than you currently are. I would like to do above the previous low at 220. That would do a couple things. What that would do first, step one, is you would re-enter your daily gap. And typically when the stock re-enters the daily gap, it moves very volatile, right? It moves very quickly. And this gap is a doozy, right? It's freaking humongous. What is that? A 22% gap with the low at 273, right? So if you're looking for a quick swing, truthfully, traders, if you get above this downtrend and above the 9-day EMA currently trading at 230, this thing could just, right, rip the Band-Aid off, reverse, and just swing the other direction. That is your best case scenario. Your worst case scenario is you reject the 9-day EMA here, you lose the 200, and you see volume pick up. That is your absolute worst case scenario in AMC that we do not want to see. But you're doing everything that you have to do, right? You're dotting your I's, crossing your T's. So I'm not worried at the moment for AMC, but that's kind of just our quick technical analysis update on where you stand today. On the monthly time frame, printing a very big, what is that? Delete some lines here. Printing an inverted hammer candlestick. So on the grand scheme of things, right, the more you zoom out, the more the macro looks clear. You've printed your highest node of volume for the first time since all the way back, more than all the way back until May of 2024. So significantly bullish to see that happen here, as well as an inverted bullish hammer candlestick. So that is a reversal candlestick formation for bulls. So you could potentially see this thing continue here if you close green, right? You need to close green. Otherwise, this thing is a shooting star candle, and that would just be the worst case scenario on the big time frames, right? The monthly time frame. When you see this thing close high volume as a shooting star candle, that would be the ultimate bull trap in which you could swing lower here and make a potential lower low at around 70 to 80 cents. On the brighter side, right, you do have previous support, which is this downsloping channel, or the downsloping support along this channel from 2021 that you lost, regained for a slight period, but rejected. You're now inside of it again, right? And so this is the perks of doing so, is you could come back and retest that at around 145 and then spring off of it to another higher high. And truthfully, traders, as well as that, right, you look back to a very valid uptrend here that you've established from your all-time low. If you swing back here to 150 to 140, traders, and you hold, you see a strong bounce with strong volume, and then you see something like hidden bullish divergence happen again, that's where we would be screaming from the hills that this thing looks like it's going to make another higher high. But as it sits today, expect more sideways price action until you see the volume step in from the 4-hour chart. Let's cover IWM next, because IWM is seeing a breakout of that downsloping resistance. And you saw 299.69. So you have now tapped 299 twice, traders. The first one, 299.49. So I guess you could say today you made another all-time high in IWM. Now, 300 has been absolutely stubborn on this thing, but that has been our conviction since the early days of this channel, and I do still believe you're going to hit it. Once you crack above 300, traders, that is entirely price discovery, and you could honestly run all the way up to 310 to potentially further, right? Bright news on IWM is you just got the 4-hour MACD cross, and you're seeing the breakout of that downsloping resistance with a close on the 4-hour at the top of the candle. So I expect this thing to continue to go up, which bodes well for our macro thesis. Weekly time frame, you're seeing a nothing burger, right? Even though you made another all-time high, you're printing a red doji going in to the end of the week. So you really want to see this thing close green, right? green bullish hammer candle above 300 is your best case scenario for IWM, as well as breaking this overall volume downtrend across the last 3 weeks, right? Breaking that would be significant, traders. Looking at the monthly time frame on IWM, still continuing to absolutely pummel bears. And I know we have a lot of lines drawn up here. The one thing I don't like is you've seen the bullish, the bearish divergence play out on AMC. You have not seen it play out on IWM, and the volume trend has been nothing but decreasing on the bullish end, right? Bulls have printed, besides for here, right, have failed to print a higher close in volume on the monthly time frame for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 candlesticks in a row as you test the biggest resistance that IWM has ever had, right at 300. So slightly worrying. And I'm sure if we take a peek on IWM, looking at the broader time frames from TradingView, looking at the daily time frame, zooming out, you're right at resistance, right? And you've continuously made bullish or bearish divergence one time after another, seeing it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times now that you've seen bearish divergence. These oftentimes do not end well, especially when you see it that frequently, right? So you have kind of a descending triangle on IWM, and I would not be surprised to see this thing peel back, maybe make one more touch of bearish divergence before you see a larger pullback, right? Potentially to 285, and if you break this uptrend, potentially to fill the gaps below, right? So you have a gap currently sitting at 265, and then also all the way back here at 253. So just be careful, right? Do your own due diligence. I'm not a financial advisor, but these signs are there in the markets that you might see a broader pullback. And of course, nothing is invincible. AMC, GameStop, none of these risk-on assets are invincible. So if you see this larger pullback, it's oftentimes where you see rising tide sinks all ships. So looking at the monthly time frame, you are actually peeking your head on the monthly time frame for IWM above the bull zone for the first time since 2021. So this is probably the most bullish thing I've said all day. And that is because last time you peeked your head in, you saw the next month a 6% and then a blow off top and then just consolidation before you rolled over. During that stretch, once you got into the bull zone, a lot of small cap assets and highly shorted stocks, crypto, all freaking went crazy. So would not be surprising to see that happen here going into July, August, but just be tentative, right? Because it is typically very, very good once you see that happen, right? You saw it happen here, 6% in the month. You saw it happen here, 6% in a month. So there is a pretty clear trend here that every time you cross into the bull zone on the monthly time frame, you get a 6% monthly candle. 6% higher from here is what? I guess you're kind of already playing it out because you entered here. You got a 4% and then a 2%. So that might be already your 6%. Theoretically, right? But also, theoretically, this is a cup handle formation, and your full profit target is the full measurement of the cup on top of where you broke out. Now, where are you today? Right, that is fascinating when you look at a cup and handle formation on the short-term time frame. That is actually so technically confluent, it's kind of terrifying, right? 302 is potentially your top here of this technical profit target. So you could extend further because of the way that this trend line lines up, right? But as it sits, 302 is your technical profit target. You could see extension up to 320 because that is your double top here in 2021. Kind of fascinating, and we may be the only channel calling for that. So something to watch on IWM if you're looking to play the short side, which I am not, right? Looking at GME, looking at GameStop, you broke out of your falling wedge today, seeing a nice pop in volume, an inverted bullish hammer candlestick, and then you saw that continuation from the stock. So on the 4-hour chart, you've broken above the RSI band, and you're starting to see a little bit of follow through on the shorter time frames. On the daily time frame, let's just kind of give it a refresh. On the daily time frame, traders, what are you doing? You're about to test the daily RSI band, and truthfully, you should see this thing continue to rip to at least 2250. You may see some resistance there because that is the top side resistance of this sloping downtrend. Above that, traders, you hit the neckline at 2280. Above 2280, guys, this thing could go ballistic. Why is that? You currently have an inverted head and shoulders formation on this, which we've covered in the past, but a breakout from that leads you upwards of $25. Now, we did this last video where we see that $25 breakout leads you above this downtrend, which gives you an even bigger price target, right? Theoretically. So that is your profit target from that, which takes you up to 29 to 30, and breaking out of that breaks you out of this bullish pennant. So there is the opportunity for GameStop to potentially have a lot of momentum here going into the end of the year, going into summer, but you just need to see that fundamental news close, right? You need to see either GameStop deploy cash otherwise or make a bid that lands on eBay, or for something just crazy to happen, right? Maybe earnings is an absolute beat. I saw that Ryan Cohen pledged $500 million personal cash to back an all-in cash bid for eBay, saying the deal would use eBay's balance sheet without outside financing, and criticizing current leadership, right? So maybe they accept, right? Maybe they accept and this thing finds the momentum that it needs because, like we said before, markets hate more than fear uncertainty, and you are getting that in GameStop. But just a little bit of a peek on the RSI, because there were some signs that you would find a bounce here, and it is the bullish divergence as you made an equal low on the stock, right? But a slightly higher low on the RSI. You're now finding that bounce. So hopefully you could see that follow through on GME, as it's been pretty much stagnant for the last God knows what, right? 2 years pretty much. So yeah, that's GameStop for you. But the GME warrants for my boy Only in Paradise, I promised I would cover for him, and you are now up 5% off of that trend line that we marked and the horizontal support. So where you needed to find the bounce, you're finding the freaking bounce. Up 1.92% in after hours, testing the daily 9-day EMA. The most beautiful part about all of this is your daily volume on the day, right? You broke a uptrend in red volume of the past 1, 2, 3, 4 days, but you printed more green than red volume than the previous day, right? The only thing I don't like here, and I'm going to cover this very, very clearly, is your two top tailing wicks, right? This is oftentimes a sign before something rolls over, but the close overall was pretty nice, right? Inverted bullish hammer candlestick at one point up 15%. So you just need to see, can tomorrow see the follow through? And I think you're already seeing that in the after hours, right? We covered on the GME warrants that particularly, if you see this follow through, there's very little resistance until at least the 50-day EMA, right? So about a 20% swing on this, and a potential full extension upwards of 350. Now, if you break that previous resistance, there's pretty much nothing holding you back until you see that full extension of this falling broadening wedge, right? Because that's what this macro chart is showing you, falling broadening wedge. Break out that, and that takes you up to 5 schmeckles, traders. 5 freaking bucks on the GME warrants, potentially, right? So one of you guys, hope you're having a stand-up freaking week going into the weekend. Hope you guys can slap the like button and the subscribe button on the way out. If you guys found this valuable, it would mean a lot to me as we're on the freaking road to 5K. Holy Toledo, BlackBerry up 7% after hours. That is crazy. Breaking out of this bull flag. Hold up. That is crazy. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. So BlackBerry potentially I don't know about that. But as always, traders, if you take away anything in this video, take away this, that the best is yet to come. I truthfully believe it. We just need to see that higher low on AMC and a lot of the smaller cap stocks, as the macro for these stocks looks pretty freaking sweet. Until next time, traders, much love and peace.